This is Eileen Bartosh, and today I want to introduce you to a new quilt pattern of mine, Stacked Ovals. I actually loved it so much I wanted to try it in two colorways. This one is stacked with batting, a trapunto effect that I'm going to show you how to do today in blacks and whites. And this one is done with fusible out of bright colors. I love them both, can't figure out which one I like most, so I'll leave that up to you, which one you want to do. These are 30 by 40, and you can hang them either direction. Okay, to do these, go down, you need the pattern, which has all the everything you need in it, and I do have kits available. One with the black and whites and one with the colors. So those are also available. All of it's available on my website, www.eileenbartosh.com. Okay, let's talk about how we made this. First in the pattern, it tells you to make the background. Now, I honestly, on the bright colored one, made 3 or 4 backgrounds. There's strips of fabric sewn together. Of course, I didn't use this one and the other one because I discovered I liked the black and the dark gray better. But I just thought I'd show you one of them so that you can see it's just long strips sewn together, and then you trim it off to the size in the pattern. So that's the background. And it's important to do the background first because I pin all of these on to double check before I sew them together in a stack, to double check that I like the color arrangement and the colors, because there's like 5 or 6 whites and 5 or 6 blacks. So if you're not careful, you could have them all in the same grouping, and it's really better to have them separated. So to do this, in the pattern, there's sheets with the 4 sizes that you need of half ovals. And we're going to use a technique called freezer paper templates. Freezer paper is shiny when it's brand new on one side and papery on the other. So you can draw your pattern, cut it out a little bit outside the drawing, and then you can iron it onto the fabric, pick it up, and reuse it. So you may only need 1 or 2 of each of these to make the drawing easier. Of course, you can do more if you want. And one other thing, when you're cutting out on a strip of fabric, it's easier to cut from opposite sides like this so that you save as much of the strip as you can, just because. So that's a cutting tip. So that's how you start. You make your freezer paper templates. And then you iron them onto your fabric. Cut your fabric out a little extra. And as you see, that's ironed on there and very easily removable. So then you cut it out and you have 1 C piece. So then the pattern tells you how many to cut and how many you have to make. Half ovals of C, you need to make 12 half ovals of light and 11 half ovals of C. That's because on the outside you have some half ovals and you want to leave enough pieces for that. So you follow the instructions, cut out as many as you need for your project, and then you combine the dark and the lights to make a full oval. And I did press the seam allowance open for 2 reasons. One, it's more difficult, to keep the lights on the lights and the darks on the darks, but it also reduces bulk. Because we have 4 different ovals on top of each other, you want it to lay as flat as possible on the inside. So on page 2 of the pattern, it tells you how many ovals you need. Like on C, it says make 9 ovals, save 2 darks and 3 light halves for the outsides. So you'll need to just follow the instructions, make all of your ovals, and once you have them all made, you're going to want to use the trapunto. Now there's another page in the pattern that has the circles drawn regular size without seam allowance. And you want to draw the number of full ovals. Well, you don't need all of them. You want to draw a number of full ovals, and then we're going to iron it to batting. Now, freezer paper and batting is much harder to tear apart. So if you're using new freezer paper, iron it, tear it off, iron it, tear it off on a fabric, your ironing board, surface, anything to kind of wear off some of the fusible because it really sticks to batting. And then you cut this out on the line, and that's going to be your turn line. So it's important to try to get as smooth of an oval line as you can. Once you get that done, you place your oval on your pattern, and this isn't glued or anything, it just kind of sticks and holds. And you want to kind of ease it around because your fabric had oversight and your template for the center does not. Now you can line up your center line and kind of make sure that it's fairly accurate. And then what we're going to do is, I'm going to need all those glues, is fold this over, and I like to glue it down. You could run a running stitch around the outside edge, but to me, gluing is easier. There are a number of glues on the market. There's glue sticks, there's Elmer's washable school glue, Aleene's tacky glue, No-Sew fabric glue, Roxanne's glue based it, and this is a Apple glue. Now I've lost my tips for this one. Once I find those, I'll try it. I haven't even tried it. I used Roxanne's glue based it. And on my sample, the trouble with Roxanne's to me is keeping the tip clean. And I cleaned it after I used it for this project, but obviously not well enough because I tried to use it for my sample and it's glued up. So instead of messing with it, I just went to the Elmer's clear glue. However, it's a little heavier on the project than what the glues made for fabric are. But you pick out which glue style you want, and then you glue under using the edge of the batting as your line, and you don't want any kinks in it. So do it a little bit carefully, undo and try to get it as smooth as you can get it. And then I iron around the outside, which kind of sets the glue and holds it a little bit. So that is your finished oval, and then you're ready to start putting them together. At this point, there is a placement diagram in the pattern, and I start pinning all of them on the background. And this is why you need the background first, so that you can pin them all on there and make sure you like the color arrangements. You've got, you know, not all of one black design on the other side. Just make sure you've got it the way you want it. And then you start stitching. Now, I had a little bit of wiggle. You know, you line up your centers, white, black, black, white, black, on the center line, and then I stitched one side with white thread and one side with black thread. If you like to use the invisible thread, you could do the whole project with that. I did find a little bit of slippage in here every once in a while. And you'll see those when you look at it closely. It didn't bother me enough to redo it, but I thought in the pattern I added a line that you can hand baste it. You can also glue. You glue the just right on the edge where the seam allowance is to make sure that it doesn't shift on you. And then you start sewing. You start sewing with the smallest to the medium. because you're only sewing through one fabric. And then the medium to the next side, again, you're only sewing through one fabric. And then when you put it on the quilt background, again, you're only sewing through one fabric. So that's the order you do the sewing. And as to how I sewed them on, I tried out a chunk of red and I decided to do a whole different one using colors. I use a blanket stitch. Now I've got a wider stitch length and a tiny bite. The bite is really the only thing that you should see, and that's why I make it tiny. The longer stitch length, again, just keeps it from showing. Now this one I sewed all in white because I was just playing around, and I've got it a little closer than the stitch length in this one. I did put the numbers that I used in the pattern on my Bernina, but you'll have to just try and see what works better for you. And of course there are a ton of other stitches you can use. You want to match the thread to the piece you're sewing on. If this one was real, I would have used red thread and then you couldn't have seen anything. So that's how I did this. And this one's all fusible. And I guess that'll have to wait for another day. So thank you for joining me today. Check out my website where all of these are available. I also teach classes and do guild presentations should guilds ever start up again. All right, thank you for joining me. Bye now.